Hungarian Folk Tales. The Hedgehog. Once upon a time, there lived a merchant, a king, and a poor man. The merchant often went hunting in the forest, and one day he became so very lost that he wandered around for 3 whole days, unable to find his way home. He said, "Oh, if only someone would show me the way out, I'd give him the hand of the most beautiful of my 3 daughters in marriage and 3 sacks of gold. I'll show you the way out if you follow me." The merchant looked down at his feet and saw a snuffling hedgehog. Then the merchant was forced to promise the hedgehog his most beautiful daughter's hand and 3 sacks of gold if he would lead him out of the forest. Then the hedgehog set out, followed by the merchant, and they reached the edge of the forest in no time. The following day, the king also went hunting in the forest, and he also got lost, much like the merchant the day before. The king said, "If only someone would show me the way out, I'd give him the hand of the most beautiful of my 3 daughters in marriage, along with 3 carts of gold." "I'll show you the way out if you follow me." The king looked around to see where the voice was coming from and then saw the hedgehog by his feet. He was so anxious to get out of the forest that he couldn't care less who it was, so he followed the hedgehog and they soon reached the edge of the forest. The following day, the poor man also got lost in the forest. "Oh dear, I have nothing to my name, but even if an ugly beast showed me the way out of this forest, I would willingly adopt it as my own dear child." "I'll show you the way out if you follow me," a voice said. The voice, of course, came from the hedgehog, and it led the poor man to the edge of the forest in no time at all. Time passed, and the merchant, the king, and the poor man had almost forgotten about the little hedgehog. One night, after the poor man had gone to bed, someone knocked on his window. "Father dear, please open the door for me." Who can that be, the poor man wondered, because he knew he had no children. "Hello, Father, I finally come home," the hedgehog said. "Welcome, son, I'm happy you're here," said the poor man. "I am too, and would you please wake my dear mother to make my bed for me?" "Father dear, do you have 2 pennies?" the hedgehog asked. "Yes, I do, my son," said the poor man. "Well then, please go into town, and in the marketplace you'll find a very old lady selling a black cockerel." "Buy it for me," said the hedgehog. "Then go to the saddler, who has a worn-out saddle, and buy that for me too." So the poor man went into town, bought the black cockerel and the worn-out saddle, and took them home, where the hedgehog saddled the cockerel, climbed up onto its back, and rode away as fast as the wind. The hedgehog didn't stop until it reached the home of the merchant, where it said, "Merchant, sir, open the door and let me in." The merchant nearly fell over backwards when he saw the hedgehog, but he had to let it in. Then he called his 3 daughters and told them of the promise he had made to the prickly creature. The merchant's daughters cried and cried, but the hedgehog paid no attention and chose the most beautiful girl and tried to comfort her with the following words. "You are mine, and I am yours, till death do us part." But the pretty girl refused to repeat his words and cried so much that she threw herself down on the ground. But protest as she might, the girl was forced to leave home with the hedgehog. Then the merchant harnessed the horses, put 3 sacks of money into another cart, and off they went with the hedgehog proudly riding its black cockerel alongside. "Are you still crying? I am, and I will cry until my dying day." "In that case," said the hedgehog, "go back to your father." But the hedgehog kept the 3 sacks of gold and took them home to the poor man. Time passed until the day eventually came when the hedgehog saddled its black cockerel and rode off to visit the king of the land. The hedgehog told the king why it had come, hoping the king remembered his promise. "I only wish I had forgotten, but I haven't, and I always keep my word," said the king. He called his 3 daughters and sadly told them what had happened to him in the forest, and now this prickly creature had come here to pick his most beautiful daughter for his wife. "It may think I'm the most beautiful, but I refuse to be a hedgehog's wife. I'd rather die than be a hedgehog's wife. I'll be only too happy to be its wife because it was so kind to my dear father." The king was happy and sad at the same time. He was glad one of his daughters had turned out to be so kind-hearted, but was sad to lose his only kind-hearted daughter. The king loaded silver, gold and diamonds onto 3 carts, harnessed horses to the royal coach, and the princess climbed in. The hedgehog, however, did not go in the coach, but rode alongside on the black cockerel. They had been riding for many hours and were far away from the palace when the hedgehog looked into the coach and was surprised to see the princess happy and not crying. She said, "Why do you insist on riding that black cockerel instead of sitting beside me here in the coach?" "Aren't you afraid of me?" the hedgehog asked. "Why should I, when I know you will do me no harm?" she replied. "Don't you find me ugly?" asked the hedgehog. "Of course not," the princess replied. Then a miracle happened. The hedgehog shook itself and immediately turned into a tall and handsome prince who beamed brighter than the sun. Then the cockerel shook itself and turned into a fabulous stallion. And a palace appeared with walls and windows made of sparkling diamonds. Then they sent for the king, they sent for the poor man, and they sent for everyone in the land to join them at their wonderful wedding feast. And they all lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Contrary Wife and the Devil. Once upon a time there lived a woman who was very contrary. One day her husband told her to take his lunch to the field an hour early. So instead she took it out an hour late. Another time he told her to take better food out to him, but instead she took worse. Eventually her husband learned to make his requests backwards and said, well, wife, do not bring stuffed chicken and pancakes to me today, because they are not the kind of food to eat out in the field. It's true his wife took the food out earlier that day, but she did take her husband his stuffed chicken and pancakes. The next day, her husband got hard to work and dug a deep pit at the end of the field. And the farmer's wife came to him with his food for lunch. The couple soon settled down next to the pit, and the man said to his wife, "Wife of mine, do not go near to the pit, because you will surely fall into it." But But the man's wife still ventured close to the pit. "Wife of mine, take care and do not fall into the pit." But the man's wife fell right to the bottom of the deep pit. Hey! Then the man left his wife where she was, and he went home for his supper. The contrary wife tried hard to climb out of the pit, but it proved pointless. "I would even thank the devil if he got me out of here." "Well, here I am," the devil said to the wife. "I came to get you out. Climb onto my back." So the wife climbed onto the devil's back and he pulled her out of the pit. Then the devil said to her, "Now you can get off." And the woman said, "I will not." So the devil said, "Then take good care because you will soon fall off." And the devil began to dash madly around the land. Soon the devil grew tired and he said to the woman, "Get off my back this minute." And the woman said, "No, I will not." The devil was tired out and he said to the old woman, "Now get off my back." "No, I will not." The devil was desperate and did not know what to do next. Then he saw a soldier riding by and said, "Good hussar, if you can get this woman off my back, I will make you king." So the hussar got off his horse, walked cursing over to the woman and told her if she did not get off, he would cut her in two with his sharp sword. But the wife said, "No, I will not." So the brave hussar fought the woman with his sword. "Get off his back, good woman, or I will end your life." "No, I will not." Then the hussar said, "If you won't, then stay sitting on the devil." So then the woman said, "No, I will not." And she leapt off the devil's back, and the devil vanished. The hussar went on his way the following day, and the devil was waiting for him under a bridge as he planned to crown him king. The devil saw the hussar riding towards him. He poked his head out from under the bridge and shouted, "Fine hussar, the woman isn't still here, is she?" "She is not, do not fear." And as the hussar reached him, the devil said, "Now I will make you king. You must go to the king's daughter, and during your journey I will possess her soul. And then her hand will be promised to the man who can drive me out of her. But no one will be able to do this, only you. You simply have to say, 'Jump out, because I want to take her.' But should I possess another of his daughters, you must not drive me out, for then I will possess you, and you will never be free of me again." So now the hussar travelled to the town where he heard the news that the king's daughter had been possessed by the devil. The decree was made that whosoever could drive the devil out would get the princess and half the kingdom. The hussar was delighted by this news, and so he reported to the palace saying he could drive the devil out. He said to the devil, "Jump out, devil, because I want to take her." Then the devil jumped out right away, and plans were made for the royal wedding. Years passed, and the news came that the devil had now possessed the king's second daughter. The hussar was asked to go out, but he was unwilling because he remembered what the devil had told him before. The hussar was promised treasure and many jewels, and so he eventually went. There he said to the devil, "Devil, jump out of there too, because I want to take her." The devil jumped out right away and was about to attack the poor hussar when he stamped hard on his foot and said, "Do you hear, devil? That woman is coming." Hearing this, the devil began to run and run and ran away forever and a day. Hungarian Folk Tales. The pin, the dog, the crayfish, the egg and the cockerel. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, there was a little pin that was very bored in the sewing box. And the little pin thought it would go out and see the world. The pin walked and walked, and as it was walking along, it met a dog, and the dog said, "Where are you going, friend?" "Why, I'm going out to see the world." "Then I shall go with you too." "Please do." They walked and walked, and as they were walking, they met a crayfish. The crayfish said, "Where are you going to, friend?" "Why, I'm going out to see the world." "Then I shall go with you too." "Please do." They walked and walked, and they were walking along when they met a rotten egg. The egg said, "Where are you going, friend?" "Why, I'm going out to see the wide world." "Then I shall go with you too." "Please do." They walked and walked, and they were walking when they met a cockerel. The cockerel said, "Where are you going to, friend?" "Why, I'm going out to see the world." "Then I shall go too." "Please do." They walked and walked until they arrived in the back of beyond, and night began to fall around them and the sky grew dark. The four of them looked for a place to lay their heads for the night, but they found themselves in a vast forest and searched for a place to sleep. Then they caught sight of a cottage where they decided to go and ask for shelter. They walked into the cottage, but found that it was empty inside. "It doesn't matter that no one's at home, we can still sleep here for the night." And each found a place to lay its head. The pin stuck into a towel, the egg rolled into the ashes, the crayfish sat in the wash basin, the cockerel roosted on top of the fence, and the dog lay down on the shady porch. Then they all fell fast asleep because they were tired from all the walking they had done that day. The cottage was owned by 3 foxes that had gone down into the town to steal chickens from farms as the darkness descended. Now the 3 foxes came running home. As they ran, twigs cracked under their feet, and the cockerel heard them approaching and crowed a warning to its friends. The foxes stopped for a second when they heard the crowing, but then they ran quickly on. Then the dog took notice and began to bark. The foxes stopped again when they heard the dogs barking. What could be happening at the cottage, they thought. But then they carried quickly on. When the foxes arrived, the cockerel crowed, the dogs snapped at their heels, but they carried quickly on into the cottage. But a terrible surprise still awaited them. The father fox said to its son, "Quickly go and look for a coal in the ashes, that we can light a lamp and see what's happening in the cottage." One of the fox's sons went to the fireplace and sorted through the ashes. But the egg blew up in the fox's face, so it ran to the basin for water where the crayfish lay that pinched the fox hard. It tried and tried to shake the crayfish from its paw. It grabbed the towel to dry itself and the pin pricked it sharply. "Run away! We need to run from this terrible place!" And the foxes ran and ran and ran away, and may still be running till this very day. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Magic Mill. Once upon a time, there lived a poor old man who had more children than there are holes in a sieve. His oxen were so small that they were barely any bigger than grasshoppers. The poor man and his wife spent all their days and nights worrying about how they would feed their very large family. One day, the poor man hitched his tiny 2 oxen to his tiny cart and went into the forest. The poor man was busy collecting dry branches and stacking them neatly on the back of his cart when he caught sight of a boy and a girl playing in a clearing close by, and the children began to talk to him. The poor man soon learned that the girl was the daughter of the king of the sunrise and the boy the son of the king of the sunset. As the 3 of them chatted away, the boy noticed the 2 tiny oxen. The little prince was so besotted with these miniature beasts that he begged the poor man to sell them to him. The young prince appealed and pleaded and promised the poor man that his father, the king, would reward him richly, and so the poor man eventually agreed. When the poor man arrived home without the oxen, there was an almighty argument, and his wife was so angry with her husband that he turned on his heels and left the house for the court of the king of the sunset. The poor man arrived to see the prince playing with the 2 tiny oxen. "Come, kind sir, come," said the prince, "and let me give you some advice. No matter what my father offers you, you should refuse it and insist that he gives you the magic mill in payment." So the poor man went to the king, who said, "Your 2 tiny oxen give my son such great joy and pleasure that you may have whatever you ask." Then the poor man noticed that the magic mill was on the table, and it was so very small that it looked like a child's toy. So the poor man said, "Your Majesty, the only thing I wish to have in return for my 2 tiny oxen is this tiny mill on your table." The king said, "Sir, you may have whatever you wish for, but not that." "Now then," thought the poor man, "this tiny mill isn't a toy after all, as the king does not want to part with it." The poor man humbly added, "Your Majesty, please let me have this tiny mill so that my children may also have a toy to play with." The king loved his own child very dearly, so he agreed to give the poor man the mill. Then the prince said, "Kind sir, you should leave for your home now, and when you arrive back, place the mill on the table and say, 'Magic mill, give me gold and food to eat.' And when the mill has made enough, you simply say, 'Magic mill, stop your magic now.'" The poor man was delighted with his prize. He then thanked the prince for his kindness, put the tiny mill under his arm, and hurried home so quickly that his feet never touched the ground. He was on his way home when he saw something large and black looming towards him, but he could not for the life of him guess what it was. And what do you think it was? It was a horrible, huge, black hat. Underneath the hat was a man, and the poor man joked with him and said, "Good day, good friend. Isn't that hat too tight for you?" The hatted man replied, "Instead of mocking me, sir, why don't you give me a bit of bread, because I haven't eaten for 3 days straight?" The poor man said, "But I don't have any food with me either." But then he remembered the magic mill and said, "Magic mill, give me good food to eat." The poor man had barely finished speaking when so much food appeared that there was enough to feed a village for a week. "Magic mill, stop your magic now." Then the two men ate and talked a while until the hatted man said, "Good sir, your mill is a magical thing indeed, but my black hat also has spectacular powers. Ask for one of anything and it will give you 2 instead. I will trade my hat for your mill." "Sir, I'm not a fool." "That's what you think, just watch this," said the man in the hat. "Fire!" "Enough!" "Yes," said the poor man, "I see your hat is quite splendid, but a hat such as that would not save me from starvation." But the hatted man appealed and pleaded with the poor man until he eventually agreed to the exchange. When the hatted man walked away, he also left a stick lying on the ground. The poor man was left feeling cheated and sad when the stick suddenly spoke up and said, "Why so sad, master?" "I'm sad because I have lost the little sense I was born with, and I'm sad because I have lost my magic mill that I was foolish enough to swap for a hat." Then, in an instant, the stick hurried away and reappeared with the magic mill. And so the poor man had no reason to feel sad a moment longer. When the poor man returned home, his family surrounded him and rejoiced when they learned that the mill had magic powers. Days and months passed, and one day the poor man was standing at his gate when he saw the king approaching on foot with his wife and son. The poor man asked the king, "Where to, your majesty? Where are you walking on foot?" The king replied, "We're in very great trouble. The king of the north has invaded my kingdom, and I have been forced to flee my home with my beloved family. But don't be sad over such a little matter, your majesty. I will mend matters in no time at all." Then the poor man put the huge hat on his head, took the stick in his hand, and set off to find the king of the north's soldiers. It was not long before he stumbled across them, because the king of the sunset's kingdom was crowded from border to border by the soldiers. Then the poor man climbed to the top of a hill, pointed his huge black hat in the direction of the enemy and commanded, "Hat, fire!" He then sent his stick after the men to beat their behinds to make them run faster still. The carnage was incredible, and not a single soldier of the King of the North survived to tell the tale of what had happened that day. Having destroyed the enemy, the poor man turned and made his way home, where he told the king what he had done and that he could return to the Sunset Kingdom. Then the king purchased the hat and the stick from the poor man and made his way back to his royal home. So now the Sunset Prince married the Sunrise Princess. They had a wonderful wedding, and the poor man led the dancing, and if his legs can stand it, he is still dancing to this very day. Folk Tales. The Shepherd and the Snake. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there lived a poor shepherd boy. The only thing the shepherd boy possessed was a little donkey, and he spent his days guarding the mayor's flock of sheep. He sat watching the flock one day and thinking how unfair it was that some people had money and were rich, while others had none and were poor. He sat thinking and thinking when he suddenly heard the sound of crying. "Help me! Help me!" The boy followed the sound of crying and walked to a hole in the ground, where he came upon a yellow-bellied snake wriggling in a fire. "Help me, shepherd boy, and I will soon repay the favour." So the boy held out his stick, and the yellow-bellied snake slithered up it and out of the fiery flames. Then the snake said, "Follow me, and you should know that my father is the king of all snakes." The yellow-bellied snake slithered along, and the young shepherd walked quickly behind. He left his donkey to watch over the sheep. The boy followed the snake until they found themselves in a forest, where the yellow-bellied snake suddenly slithered under a flat stone. The snake shouted back, "Push the stone away and follow me." The young shepherd did as the snake had said and revealed steps going down into the ground. And he walked down and down and down until he arrived in a beautiful diamond meadow. "This is my father's palace." And the gate to the palace was guarded by two very large snakes. There the yellow-bellied snake slithered in, and the young shepherd followed close behind. They passed through one room after the other until they arrived at the throne room that sparkled with silver and gems. The walls were studded with diamonds, and everything was decorated in precious metal. The Snake King was sitting proudly on an enormous throne, and when he wanted to give his servants an order, he would simply flick his tail and bells would ring. Then the yellow-bellied snake hurried up to the king and embraced him. "Father dear, don't harm this poor shepherd boy because he saved me from the fire." "Now, young shepherd boy, you may choose from two things as your reward for saving my son. You can learn to speak to all the animals, or I can give you a bag of gold." The poor shepherd boy thought hard because he was sorely tempted by the promise of riches, but he would never ever have the chance to learn the language of the animals again. And so that is what he chose. "Come here, my child," said the Snake King. So the young shepherd boy approached the fearsome snake, and the king hissed in his ear, and he instantly understood what the king was saying to his snake son. So then the poor shepherd boy bid farewell to the yellow-bellied snake and his father the king, and started to walk back the way he had come. He walked on until he came to the beautiful meadow, climbed back up the underground steps, and re-emerged into his own world once more. Then he herded his sheep up and sat down to reflect on all that had happened to him that day. And as he sat there, two tiny birds flew up and landed in the top of a tree, where they sat talking to each other. Did you know? If that poor shepherd boy only knew what lies at the foot of this tree, he would not stay poor for one day more. But the young shepherd heard this and understood all they said. So he swiftly drove his sheep back to their owner, picked up his sharpest axe, and walked back to the forest to the tree where he had sat. And he dug until he discovered, to his great delight, a big pot of gold. As evening fell, he took the gold home and never had to watch the mayor's sheep again. Then he soon bought a beautiful house with plenty of land, married his bride, and they both lived happily ever after.